The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
I'd like to introduce my next guest, Julie Corbin, licensed marriage and family therapist. She spent years leading troubled and urban teens on wilderness trips, facilitating awe-inspiring personal change along the way before becoming a counselor. After tiring of living in a tent, she obtained a master's in marriage and family counseling from Stetson University. She specializes in the treatment of trauma and working with families navigating divorce, and holds an EMDR certification. She's been working in private practice for roughly a decade and has spent the past few years developing a niche in the area of mediation and parenting evaluations. That's going to be the topic of our discussion today. I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you, Julie, for being willing to talk to me about this.
Thank you, Raina, for inviting me.
No problem. So I think the first thing maybe we could talk about is, what is mediation and what are parenting evaluations for people that don't know?
All right. Well, I'll start with mediation, and mediation is considered an alternative dispute resolution. One way which our state, Florida, is actually advanced is in having a very formal process for helping people resolve legal conflicts without needing to go in front of a judge, go through the process. It's very time consuming and expensive to file motions, hearings, and resolve their issues through litigation and court orders. So the idea is that with mediation, people will be able to resolve their problems before they have to go that far. I do family mediation specifically, which is primarily mediating divorces or changes in a divorce agreement. Although, in theory, people could use family mediation for any purpose. They're trying to their adult siblings are having conflict over how to care for aging parents.
Oh, wow.
Not that I've ever done a mediation like that, but it is certainly can be done.
Okay, yeah,
mine
I've never
are primarily
heard of that.
divorce.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with the divorce just because I work a lot with kids too, and so you hear about it more often. But I could see how that would be really helpful, though, for caring for older parents and grandparents and things like that too. And so what about the parenting evaluations? How does that work?
This is something that, again, is kind of local to Florida, although parenting evaluations are done nationally and internationally. In Florida statute, there's a statute that allows licensed master's level counselors and psychologists to write something called a social investigation. And there are, in Florida, 20 different factors that determine how children should spend their time and how parents should make decisions for their children after divorce. And so the role of the evaluator is to go through all 20 of those factors and inform the judge about how the parents, where the child has lived and where the parents live now and how far they are from the school and what are their work times and are there psychological problems or health problems or substance abuse problems that could be a factor here in caring for the children, and then to make recommendations for what is the best parenting plan for these children that's in their best interest after the divorce.
Wow, so it sounds like a very comprehensive process that you have to undertake.
I call them exhaustive and extensive.
So how long does it take to do one?
I will say they typically run 40 to 50 hours of my time. between interviewing, I review documents, every court document ever filed regarding either party in any case. The court, or it's appointed by court order, it releases DCF records, school records, medical records, and certainly any legal criminal records or police records, for the purpose of getting a comprehensive picture. So reading the documents can actually be very time consuming too. The reports run about 35 to 50 pages. Let's say they start at about 35 or 40 pages and go up from there.
Wow. So this is a very, very specialized service that you're providing here. And how did you learn about how to do that and get involved in that?
Well, I've been pretty blessed along the way in that my father is recently retired as a circuit court judge in Florida. He spent the majority of his time on family court. He really promoted mediation and alternative dispute resolution because the dockets are so crowded, and he was frustrated at people would want him to make life-changing decisions literally after an hour's worth of testimony. And so at one point, as I'm developing in my career, he'd mentioned, you're qualified to do social investigations. I majored in journalism, so I was writing as an undergraduate, so writing is familiar to me. And I'd previously written a similar report for the Department of Children and Families as a contract writer called a comprehensive behavioral health assessment. But that's for children who've recently been taken into foster care.
Mm-hmm. But those don't seem to be nearly as extensive as this parent evaluation that you're doing.
No, those were usually about 20 hours at most, and were probably 20 to 25 pages long.
And so did you have to take any specialized additional training in order to be able to be somebody that the courts would assign this process to?
It's frightening to say no.
Wow, okay.
I think one should, and I've done many things to be qualified, which we can talk about later if you want.
Yes, definitely.
But in the end, it's simply been a matter of putting my name out there. And fortunately, because of the work I've been doing in the community and family law for the last 10 years, beginning to be appointed in court orders to do so, and have my name put forth. The fact that we have a shortage of evaluators in the community doesn't hurt either. Okay.
So I didn't realize that, but this is really my first time even learning about that aspect of it, how intensive it is. And so what about with the mediation process? What's the process of that? How did you become a mediator? And what's the time that you have to put in for those kinds of cases?
The requirement is that you need to attend, again, and this is determined by state, that you need to you attend a 40-hour training. Only people, though, who are licensed therapists, licensed psychologists, attorneys, and a couple of other professions, doctors in general can be mediators. And I'm sorry, I'd actually have to look the details up beyond that. So you attend the 40-hour training, and then you need to do another, it works out to around 5 to 8 observations or co-mediations, and it's considered a mentorship, at which point you then are eligible to be certified by the state as a mediator in whatever field. I do family court mediation. There are dependency mediations as well, which is for DCF, and it's a separate training. There's circuit civil with personal injury, or county mediations, like the fence fell down and which neighbor's job is the fence, and things like that. So they're all different specialties.
Okay, very interesting. And so how long of a process, if you go into a mediation, say you're going to help a family come up with their plan, what's the process of that, and how long does that take?
Well, what I've been doing, I have a contract as an independent contractor with the clerk of courts. And here, everybody who files for divorce or files any motion in family court, even if they're never married, it's paternity, or they want to change their plan, they're automatically sent to mediation first. You can't, in most circumstances, the details are very much attorney things, not therapist mediator things. You wind up with a mediator first. So the county, our county operates a mediation center, and they just have contract mediators rotating through. And in that case, it's a 3-hour block to meet, which is sometimes plenty of time and sometimes not nearly enough time. I would say that if I'm mediating a full settlement agreement for a divorce, which involves you just dividing the assets and the kids, not dividing the kids, but determining child support, and where are the kids going to be at when, and who's going to make decisions about them, how. We don't have custody in Florida, that's why I'm avoiding that word. That I would like to have, I would think 6 to 10 hours, not necessarily on the same day. People do hire mediators privately. As I'm building my experience and my reputation, I will be marketing my availability to do that too, at which point mediations can take all day. They can go into the night. People like to tell war stories about how long their mediation was, or how maybe the attorneys or the mediator, got an agreement after a 10-hour mediation and things like that.
And so obviously adding these to the work that you're doing in practice, you're still providing individual therapy services and still doing family therapy services in your practice. But you're adding these on. How do you divide the time? Because these two things really seem very time consuming. And if you had enough of those coming in, they could really take up the bulk of your week.
Oh, easily, if I let them. I think, you've asked the question that has been the question on my mind since I started doing this. I originally did my mediator training in 2017, 2.5 years ago now, to observe and do my mediation mentorship. Took me nearly a year just to get in those. I think I did 8, because it was difficult to take the time out of my practice. And so what I've been doing is, I guess, attrition. I'm not willing to abandon care for my clients. You mentioned EMDR certified. I have a pretty intensive caseload, and I've just kind of been not taking new people and waiting on people to finish therapy. So at this point, I'm down to about 15 to 20 clients a week on 2 to 3 days a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do not book sessions, and I save those for family law. So I'm getting to the point where I can begin to see some light at the end of the tunnel, because it's hard to switch. They're slightly different. They're different modes of thinking and acting and being, and it's hard to switch. So it's easier for me to have a therapy day, and then I have a family law day.
Oh, that makes total sense, though. I feel the same way, even about doing administrative stuff for the business. If I'm in with clients all day and I'm in that headspace, it's very difficult to transition into how am I organizing my schedule and what are these other tasks that need to get done. I have to schedule those on different days or different times. It can't be in the middle.
Mondays are my practice therapy admin day, primarily. And then overflow can be whatever it needs to be.
And then Wednesday and Thursday, you're seeing cases at the practice.
Wednesday and Friday.
Friday. So you have kind of a
balance.
I
just picked them. I try. I just picked them because at the time I had clients with standing appointments on Wednesdays and Fridays who I didn't want to move. We were, pretty deep into some pretty heavy work, and I knew their schedules. And I thought, well, I'll just keep coming in Wednesdays and Fridays. I don't have to move them. I think as any therapist would say, but they really emphasize with trauma work that you need to balance your caseload and
Yes.
be aware of how many clients of what different intensities and need you have on any given day and on your caseload.
Absolutely.
So that part I think comes naturally has begun to be an automatic part of my thinking.
Mm-hmm. And so how, what is the difference in what you're able to command fee-wise for these other I think they're very specialized services that you're able to provide in comparison
Yeah.
to treatment? Well, I mean, that's specialized too, but
It is, and although there's very little formal education required to do them well, has been the social investigation has felt like taking an extra class or two in graduate school. I am paying for supervision or consultation, whatever you want to call it, with someone who's been doing these longer than I have. There are national standards that would say I should do that, and I need to be able to show when I get sued because somebody will not like my agreement. These are the things I've done for my education. And I guess I'm saying that to justify my fees because I'm starting out with the evaluations at $200 an hour. Although the other person in town charges $250. And it's not unheard of for evaluators in other parts of the state to charge more than that. So and then the mediations, the contract mediators are only paid $100 an hour. Only, and I say that because a private mediator will typically be paid $150 to $200 an hour. Locally, I hear of Miami area mediators who command $350, $400 an hour.
Wow.
With the the big shot like Miami Dolphins player divorces and things like that.
Okay.
That's out of my league. I don't know that I'd ever be interested in being in that league, to tell you the truth. But I did my mediator training over
there on the East Coast.
I was in Boca Raton on the east coast of Florida, and so I heard a lot of big numbers being thrown around in my training. There was a lot of Miami area attorneys.
Well, I think that it's good to point out because everywhere we're practicing, what we're able to command is going to be different. But it certainly seems like these fees are substantially, or at least with the parenting evaluation, that is at a substantially higher rate than most therapists in town are charging.
And one thing that's important to me is I work in an insurance-based practice. We don't accept Medicaid, but to be honest, Blue Cross pays less than Medicaid these days. And it's been part of my commitment that I really like working with police officers and teachers and people middle-class people who know to work hard and things aren't going to work out perfectly. They make great clients. But to do so, of course, my hourly income from therapy is lower than it would be if I were entirely self-pay.
Yeah.
And, in a way, I think after Blue Cross cut our rates 25% about 2 years ago, and that was when I started looking to do something else in a way to subsidize my therapy practice.
Yeah. No, I think it's really helpful when we think about building a profitable and stable practice to support ourselves, having different streams of income and different ways of practicing. So if one thing isn't picking up, maybe the other thing can keep us going. Or if you lose contracts with certain insurance companies, like I have one that they're just not renewing, and so it's being picked up by another insurance company, so I have to terminate with a lot of clients over that. That's gonna adjust, so having the two things is great.
Yeah, I think the other thing you'll notice the timing is when Donald Trump was elected. I thought, well, there goes the insurance marketplace. I think was concerned about what mental health will cover, what will be covered by insurance. If Obamacare is repealed, the Mental Health Parity Act is repealed, and insurance companies won't be required to cover mental health anymore.
Yeah.
under federal law. Hasn't happened yet, but just seemed like multiple income streams would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern if your practice is all insurance based.
And I'm not trying to be political at all, just really recognizing what are the factors, the bigger picture factors that affect our businesses.
Absolutely. I think we have to be conscious about what's going on politically, because that governs what we're able to do.
Yes.
So, if other people were interested in going down this road of being willing to participate in the court system and do mediation or do parenting evaluations, what would be some recommendations that you would have for somebody interested in adding this into their wheelhouse for their practice?
I would say first to familiarize yourself with your state laws. Who can be certified as a mediator? And then how does the process work? How do people get to mediation? I mean, coming back to politics, the reason that the mediation is such a big field here is because Florida as a state promotes it, because our circuit, the 5 counties that we're in for the judges, orders everybody to mediation. Right? And so I would think in a different state where that's not the case, that there wouldn't be such a need for mediators. And not that you can't get out and make a case for mediation, but that you'd have to sell it harder to help people understand the benefit. So I would really say to look at your state and local laws, practices, and then really educate yourself on if it looks like a direction you want to go. Figure out ways to really educate yourself on the law, knowing what does a divorce agreement or a custody plan or whatever it's called where you live, what does that look like, and what are the options for it? Florida has it pretty as open. The laws are very open online. They're easy to read. You can find them easily. Read through the statutes and understand what you're looking at. I joined some, I think, professional organizations. Their value just can't be overstated. We have a local family law group that consists of we call them all the family law types, attorneys who specialize in family law and also mental health types, because we have so many different licensing designations, they just call us mental health types, who work in family law, accountants and financial types who will help with complicated divorces, dividing up a family business, things like that.
Sure.
Which can be really pretty extensive.
I can imagine.
And so I've been in that group for about 10 years now, and that's been really helpful, just attending their lunches and their continuing ed seminars and just learning. This is, as you point out, there is another knowledge base that comes together. And I won't say that being a therapist isn't, especially a family therapist, isn't incredibly helpful in mediating, because it really is. And I can see the difference in how I mediate and other therapists mediate compared to how attorneys mediate.
Oh, I would imagine a big difference.
There's a big difference. People don't believe me, and I say, well, sometimes it's divorce mediation is a bit like marriage counseling. Okay, wait, listen, take notes, you'll get your turn. Okay, you were saying, although if there's too much of that in marriage counseling, maybe they should, it's not necessarily a good sign.
Yeah. So investigate what the state and local laws are and really get comfortable understanding how your state works according to these processes. And so lots of education there. Joining a professional organization that specializes in family law. How would one find something like that in their locale? Did somebody point you in that direction?
Yes. I mean, I think it was, actually as a graduate student, I attended a conference of some sort. It was a Florida Counseling Association conference or something like that in Orlando. And some of the leaders in our local community in family law were doing a presentation on exactly what you're interviewing me on right now.
Oh, wow.
And I walked up to them afterwards and said, "Hi, I'm from Fort Myers." And they were in this community, because there are so few mental health types who are willing to specialize in this. We are so open to help. We are so open to helping new people start. There's too much business for us to be competitive, too much need. And so that was how, I just went to a conference. There is a national organization called the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, maybe conciliatory courts. It's called the AFCC, and they're the resource bank. They have their guidelines on there for all the ethical guidelines, court involved mediation, court involved therapy, parent evaluations in the case of domestic violence. That they're the ones who set the standards. They're the ones who you point to and you refer to if people challenge your process, and of course you should be following their process. They do have state chapters, and I believe every state has them.
Okay.
So you could definitely look at joining the AFCC, or at least look at their website and see what resources they have out there.
Yeah, I'm going to put their website in the show notes.
It's afcc.org.
Oh, perfect.
And I would just Google family law in your community.
Mm-hmm. See what comes up.
Mediation in the name of your town, and just see what comes up.
And once somebody decides to add this to their practice, what have you found to be most helpful in terms of marketing such a specialized service?
Attorneys. These are not, there are people who offer private mediations pre-suit, before anybody files anything. And I want to start doing those. Sometimes couple decide they want to get divorced, they'll want to sit down, work out their plan, and then just file it without attorneys. It's definitely the most cost-effective way to go. But the vast majority of mediations are really attorneys select them. And so knowing attorneys, marketing to attorneys, or the same thing goes with evaluations. Nobody's going to this isn't something a divorcing couple is just going to decide to do. This is going to be something that they can't make a decision. There's usually pretty critical factors going on. And they're thinking that despite the expense of this evaluation, it's a lot cheaper than litigating. And going to court over and over and over again to try to get some plan recommended by a judge.
Sure. That's why I was asking, because it doesn't sound like it's something that a parent would just say, "Oh, I'm going to look for this specialized thing and have an evaluation done." It sounds like more recommended.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's more networking with other professionals.
Excellent. Any other thoughts you'd care to share on this topic of if people were interested in adding this into their practice?
I would just, throw in again the importance of the support of other professionals. I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't run into those, Dr. Silver and Dr. Silver, I'll give them that credit, at that conference 15 years ago. And the willingness to just ask questions, ask for help, reach out to professionals in your field. This field is actually remarkably open. I attended a national conference for parenting evaluation.
Oh, wow.
And they called them custody evaluations. We don't say that in Florida. And San Diego. And even the leaders, the ones who publish the best research, they're so open. They answer emails. You literally can just email them and say, "Hi, I want to start doing these. What do you think I should do?" And maybe on a different level, even if somebody doesn't want to do family law, I think it's kind of looking at, well, what are my other skills? What are my other connections? My dad was a family law judge. I spent 20 years having lunch with him after hearings. I've heard about a lot of family law. I've heard in detail. And Randy, you're laughing now because you've met my dad. You know how much detail Sitting with him after a hearing, you can imagine how much detail I heard in this field. And not everybody has that, of course, but you have other things that you don't realize you have because you're not thinking of them in that frame. How can I integrate this into my business?
No, I love that. It's really about the creative part of who we are, and coming up with, well, what else can I do? I mean, yes, we're specializing in providing therapy services, but there's so much more that we can do that might not be just the traditional, I'm going to have a practice and I'm just going to see 25 cases a week and do that, which is great too. But
last week I was looking at trying to juggle all these things, and I thought, wow, I wish I was just seeing 25 people a week. But not really. But it when you add different specialties, it definitely mixes up the juggling a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it keeps you fresh. You don't get bored. You're challenged. I know for me, that's really important. If I do the same thing every single day, it's not going to be a good thing. I need to have that diversity in how I'm structuring my business.
Me too. And I bring some of that into my therapy, and then I bring my therapy into that work as well. And none of them would work, so they all, I'm out of good words to describe it. I don't know.
But it all integrates. It integrates really well.
Integrates. There we go. That's the word.
Balances it out. So if people did want to reach out and they had more in-depth questions about how to get started in this field of mediation and parenting evaluations, or whatever it may be called in their community, where could they find more information about you and reach out to you?
I do therapy through iBoss Counseling in Cape Coral, Florida. I'm on the website. My contact information's there. And I guess you'll put that in the show notes.
Yes, I'll put the website in the show notes, and that's iBoss, IBOS counseling.com.
It is. It stands for Inner Belief, Outer Strength, for what it's worth.
No, that is good to explain it, because it's confusing if you don't know.
Agreed. I'm a contractor in the practice.
And well, I very much appreciate you taking the time and sharing about how this has been going in your practice and how you're using it to diversify your income and have a balanced practice.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.